Shall we close up with the Eliot Page tweet?
I think that we've talked about it all through.
Yeah, we have.
And I think that, I don't know if there's more to really add.
Well, so here's it with me. I mean, choose your words carefully.
Yeah.
Choose your words carefully. Criminal physician has a bunch of connotations. Is it a criminal physician if somebody gets their face tattooed 500 times, if they get implants all over their body? There's a million things that adults do.
That's a good question, and that's a whole separate discussion, right? Because you have a...
Not really, because you're picking one out and you're not looking at the others, just like you did with Justice Jackson.
Well, you can't look at all of them at the same time.
But you look at one set particularly, mostly recently, and it's of a direction.
I know that, but it's also the case that it's in that set is causing a tremendous amount of trouble. The first, look, Greg, I knew when the pronoun bill came out, I knew that for every trans kid that was hypothetically saved, we would doom 100 confused adolescent females. Because that had already happened on the anorexia front. It was like, if you knew the literature, it was obvious what was going to happen. And so there is an element of the argument that's like, well, where do adults have the right to draw the line with regards to their own surgical transformation? Perfectly reasonable thing to debate. To what degree can physicians be complicit in this? Because there is a Hippocratic oath problem there, is just because someone wants horns implanted in their head, which people have had done, doesn't mean the physician has a moral right to do that. And I know that those lines have to be drawn. And the issue with regard to surgical enhancement, say sexual surgical enhancement, is also another borderline. But there is a line here. It's like we're enticing young people with this fluidity issue. We're enticing young people to sterilize and mutilate themselves. And not just a few, a lot. And the incidence has skyrocketed to the point where yesterday, the day before, the UK closed its primary gender transformation clinic. It's like, so this is not just a difference in degree. It's a difference in
with porn,
kind.
it isn't.
With what?
With porn, it's kind. Porn is decimating our culture.
Right. But I don't think it's reasonable to say that I shouldn't have gone after the trans minor problem because I didn't simultaneously go after the porn problem.
But you didn't go after a trans minor problem in a way that made any sense because you
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Let's say, like, Eliot Page is not a rapid onset gender dysphoria convert who spent too long at Marlborough School in LA.
Maybe. Maybe.
Okay, I don't believe so. We could just.
And I think you could make a case that he isn't, but
he did it when this was not trendy. He did it when Ellen Page walked away from a lucrative career.
Right, but people can be unbelievably confused for a very long period of time. And the mere fact that it's been a long time that they've been confused doesn't mean that they've thought it through when they make their decision. And I would say it hasn't been thought through because it wouldn't have been public. That's the thing. It's like, okay, you did it.
Everything you think through wrong is public. And we're having a whole conversation about the fact that you make mistakes.
Right, but I'm not enticing adolescent girls to sterilize themselves.
Okay, but are you enticing when you make that comment about a swimsuit model, young men who worship you and think that you're saint-like to act like pigs to women?
No, but I might be encouraging them to not respect the things I'm saying because I'm being incautious. And I would say even if the first accusation was true.
With Eliot Page? Okay.
Yeah, but it's the consequences.
Yeah.
Here, it's like, look, you had your psychological problems, whatever they might be. I'm not going to argue about what they are. You rectified them in a very, very dramatic way, and perhaps that was your right, and perhaps it was the right of the surgeons. Although I'm not convinced of either of those things, by the way. It may be the case, but I'm not convinced of it. But then you made it not only public, but triumphantly public. I finally found my true self, and I'm a model for emulation. It's like, I don't think so. I don't think so.
But if he did, do you believe anyone is trans?
I wouldn't.
Like with all the variations in the world, including some people.
I know the answer to that question. Someone comes to me and asks me that question, because people have asked me those questions, and the answer is, we need to talk about it for 5,000 hours. That's the answer.
Okay.
Because who knows what someone really is? I mean, none of us know who we really are.
So if it
do I believe that men can be born in women's bodies? I certainly don't believe that statement is in any way an adequate representation of either the problem set or the solution. Here's an example. Do you believe that anorexic women who think they're too thin are too thin? Because they sure think they are. Mm-hmm. And I do not see how that's not analogous. And we wouldn't have, we don't
So
yet.
for me, this is where it taxes to the personal.
Yeah.
Where I have a friend, a family member, who lesbian, working class, Mexican, really funny, really irreverent.
Yeah.
Went through therapy, master's degree, 2 years of therapy.
Yeah.
Calmly decided, huge fan of yours.
Yeah.
Listens to you every night. Went through transition. Only questions that he came to me with were how do I be a better man? Because I always say it's hard enough to be to do one gender well. Half of us aren't doing it right.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to be gay, and then if you want to switch gender. And to me, in this individual, and I don't want to get into stats and numbers because it's a different argument, and I probably can't keep up.
Yeah.
This person is the fullest embodiment of who he is meant to be, and it's somebody who I know intimately.
Maybe.
Well, as much as you could judge as much as you are, for me, in my eyes. So whatever my opinion estimation is worth.
Well, okay, that'll switch things into a slightly different argument. I'm willing to accept that because I already said
if that's an acceptance, then again.
Wait a sec. There's there's contingency.
Okay.
If in finding your true identity, you violate a cultural norm that's so profound that you destabilize the entire country, the entire culture, then maybe you don't have the right to do that, even if it actualizes yourself.
But
I don't know, right?
But is the manner of Twitter, right? Like, how many people who are not activists are you engaged with regularly with their opinions in the public marketplace of ideas? Like, not a lot, right? They haven't had a full negotiation with the American public yet, right? There's no Harvey Milk, there's no Martin Luther King. Like, it's a conversation that hasn't happened.
Well, I don't even necessarily think that branch of the LGBTQ plus community should be conceptualized in that manner. That's the thing the liberals do immediately. This is another civil rights battle. It's like, yeah.
Oh, no.
Maybe, maybe not.
But what I'm saying is, well, maybe, but maybe not gets proven if somebody can come forth who appropriately negotiates with the culture acceptance in a manner that is moral. And by moral, it doesn't mean... So John Lewis...
There's another problem that's emerged out of this that's very, very complicated. It's like, okay, so now the trans community is brought into the realm of normativity in some sense, let's say. And so now, here's where the wheel hits the road. So now you're a 10-year-old and you're wondering about your gender identity and your sexuality, or maybe you're 11, and you're confused because maybe you're a pretty feminine boy, and maybe you're tilted biologically towards being homosexual, and now the conversation is, well, maybe you should be castrated. Mm-hmm. And the answer to that question is, yeah, maybe that'll happen.
Yeah.
And then there's another question that comes up, is like, so is it so clear that the gay community is better off under the aegis of the trans umbrella than they were under the aegis of the heterosexual monogamists? And the answer to that seems to me to be, not only are they not better off, they're way, way worse. Wait, there's one more thing. There's one more thing. The inclusion violates the ideal and the norm. And you think, well, that's necessary because then it includes. But one of the consequences might be that if you extend the ideal so that it's too inclusive, you blow the ideal so that it's even worse for those who are marginalized.
Yeah.
And I really do think that's happening in this battle.
I do too. And I agree with everything that you've said about the complexities. And the thing that is the hardest is the removal of counsel, teachers, physicians, everybody.
Psychologists who are no longer allowed to have these conversations. And I would say, well, how do I know they're not allowed to have these conversations? And the answer is, because I have 10 lawsuits against me for having these conversations, however badly I'm having them. So now we can surgically transform children, that we are not allowed to talk to.
Yes.
And I think that Eliot Page aided and abetted that.
Okay.
And pridefully.
So there's two conversations that we're having, and it's important to break it down. So one of them is in me saying, do you think anyone's trans? There's not a clear answer you can get for that. I have a different opinion that I believe that there are people that is their fullest, most embodied self. That's my opinion. You don't need to share it.
Well, I would just say I don't know, because I'd have to talk to them.
Great. So talk to them. And then,
I mean, people have all sorts of weird identities, you know, so God only knows, you know.
So part of it for me, and then there's the whole issue of how it's moving through the culture, which I do not want to defend because I don't agree with it. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to get pulled into a defense from me saying this of you saying, well, that's what you liberals do all the time. You bring it in and you normalize it and you pull it and then you decimate what the norm is. I'm saying,
well, there's some advantages to bringing in the margins into the center to the degree that you can manage it.
But what I'm saying is that is a conversation that has gone too fast, given Twitter and the pace of conversation. Like, if you're blowing up Dave Chappelle, right?
Yeah, right.
And Dave Chappelle is like...
Especially for that comedy performance. Did you listen to it? You think he's anti-trans? Are you utterly clueless?
I would never hesitate to have Dave Chappelle at my house with my transgender godson at the table and think it would be anything.